The Group Up podcast, hosted by SVB and Flats, with Alec Dawson and Aaron Keller, about 6v6 and basically just a general dev interview, just went live a couple days ago, and I am here. I want to talk about only the highlights. I'm sure plenty of people are going to just talk and recap what they were talking about, but I want to talk specifically about some of the things that caught my eye and just give my thoughts on some of those things that they talked about, because there are a lot of things that I think they're not really going to talk. If you go other places, there are going to be some, but some of these things that that aren't getting clickbaited by Overwatch Cavalry, that I think are really important or I want to talk about. So I'm not going to go further ado. I'm going to kind of do this out of order, just how I wrote them down, reacting on Twitter and also listening to this thing. So basically, first off, let's go ahead. Let's start with one, role limits and the expanded role queue. So they talked about the idea that internally when they test things, they just have it so that it's open, right? So there's still the 1-2-2 type of role queue, but or role limits, but when they do go into a lobby, they just pick, right? And once 2 DPS are taken, no one else can pick DPS. This is typically how custom game lobbies work because you don't queue into anything, and that's how they do it internally, and they talked about maybe trying that out for the real game. This is really interesting to me because 5v5 or 6v6, this instantly solves queue time problems, right? You can have your cake and eat it too. You get rid of the role queue, basically going into the lobby. I'm playing tank, right? Or I'm going to play flex. Maybe I'll play one of them. But once you're in the game, right, you can only play tank, support, or DPS. With this kind of system, you just queue in to quick play, whatever, and it's kind of first come, first serve, right? So I get in, I'm fastest, I'm going to pick DPS, and then somebody else is going to pick DPS, and then boom, no one else can, right? That is kind of an interesting idea, because if they were to bring 6v6 back, is that something that they're willing to do for queue times? Because it would fix queue times while keeping 2-2-2. And I think, in my opinion, I think it's definitely a viable strategy to fix that. But there is the elephant in the room of what happens when the support player physically cannot play their other role, right? It's not like open queue where you already have 2 supports while the other support player hasn't picked yet, can still pick support, right? What happens if that isn't the case, right? And that is a bit of an issue. Now, I'm going to refrain from being like, well, I think you should learn multiple roles and characters so that you're always, I think that's the game of Overwatch. The game and the fun is in the variety. That is extremely subjective. That's what I think. I'm not going to say that. I know that many people play this game to play one character, to play a limited pool of characters, to play one role. I understand I'm a bit of an outlier here, but I do also think that the game of Overwatch is about adapting and being ready for certain scenarios. So I can see either way. I've actually talked about some kind of system similar to this before, where if this happens and let's say I play support, right, and there's already 2 supports, you can request a swap. Basically, it's I want to play what you're playing, right? And so you'll kind of request, can somebody swap support with me so that I can play it? I think that is kind of an inelegant solution, but it could alleviate some things a little bit. Although I can imagine that being annoying. It's oh, you on the DPS are not doing very well, give it to me. And then they just keep requesting a swap in game. There's some problems with that too. But I think that this is an interesting solution, and I think it could be a good middle ground for 6v6 queue times. 5v5 queue times are perfectly fine, but, that could be an idea. Now, that is also the problem with match quality, because you're going to have one rank overall, I would assume. And if you're good at support and there's a game you can't play support, you're basically just down a different, DPS or tank. And that could feel really bad, right? So match quality overall may go down to make queue times go up. There's a lot of give and take here. They have also talked about a similar idea to this, where it's role queue. You're still going to have 1-2-2, but it isn't necessarily tank that is going to have the 1, right? So let's say you load in and 2 people pick a tank, and then 2 people pick a DPS. The last person will always play support, right? So this is still 5v5, but it doesn't matter. It's just going to have one role is going to have 1 character, the other 2 roles are going to have 2 characters, and that's how you make it, right? So you can still have that tank synergy, stuff like that, but your trade-off is either less damage, less healing. I think SVB pitched this one time. I think this is a really interesting idea, and I'd love to test this out and get my hands on this sort of system, because I think it is really interesting to be like, okay, are we okay with having 2 tanks and 2 DPS, and then maybe just not having that damage, that support pressure? Like, are we okay? Are we willing to go fast enough and not necessarily have that kind of a support diff there? I think that is an interesting idea, something to think about. It sounds like to me that it's going to be maybe a quick play hacked or something in the future. Again, that's another good middle ground solution to maybe not going all the way to 6v6, but there are things about 6v6 that we like. What if that's one of them, right? We can bring tank synergies back, but it doesn't necessarily have to be in every single game. And it can alleviate some of those really frustrating, support combinations in the back, right? Like if we really don't like 6v6, well then, or like 6v6 is enabled by the super survivable backline. Well, if you only have one of them, that could be the best of both worlds, basically. There's always a possibility that the meta favors like 2 tanks, 2 supports, 1 DPS only ever. And if anyone picks 2 DPS, well, then you're screwed, right? So there's, again, give and take. It's all a compromise here. But I think that's interesting. That is role limits. Hard counters. They talked about wanting to soften hard counters, and they didn't go into it very much. But I think this is a great idea. I think hard counters as it goes, regardless of 5v5 or 6v6, make interacting with certain characters very linear and provide little counterplay for certain characters and too much counterplay for other characters, right? I think every character should have strengths and weaknesses against each other and against certain compositions that can be exploited, right? So they don't have to be hard weaknesses, like super, super detrimental. They can be decently weak, right? But it's something to exploit. There is counterplay either way. We are interacting, we are dancing, so to speak, with each other, right? It's not just, I pick Reaper, you're Winston, you must leave, right? It is transactional at this point. If there was more that Winston could do about Reaper, or maybe less and Reaper was less effective against Winston, right? Then there's more options, more decision making. Maybe you actually can jump on a Reaper, and that's not a bad idea, right? Stuff like that. It's you want to increase the fundamental playmaking potential and the options that you have. 6v6 does help alleviate those characters, right? That are hard counters. We have something that can hard counter them. But is that really the way we want to go? Like, it still is like, if I'm Winston, I have to rely on my other characters to deal with this character. Why can I not deal with this character at all? Why can't I just, like a Roadhog or something? Why can't I have any option to deal with this character? That is really the question, right? I think that's the problem in 5v5 and 6v6 that is kind of masked in 6v6 better, but I think it's a problem either way. And I think that reworking characters so that they don't function like that, regardless of 5v5 or 6v6, is very healthy. So I'm glad to hear that they are working on trying to alleviate the hard counter situation, because I do think it is something that needs to happen. Hero bans. I have been anti-hero ban for a very long time, but I cannot lie. I just recently played in the Marvel Rivals tournament. We got top 64. Unfortunately, we didn't get any further, and we're not going to get the permanent unlocks. Damn it. But that's fine. It was a lot of fun. And one of the things that they had was they had hero bans. Now, I do want to give a caveat. I was playing in a team environment, and we just had one person picking them, and we were all talking to each other and agreeing on what we were banning. It was a very easy process for a team of 6 people to come up with. In ranked, it's probably going to be much more difficult and not going to work as well. But basically the system that they had was that one team banned a character, then the next team banned a character, and that same team saved a character that you could not ban. Then it would go over to the other team, they would save one, and then ban one more, and it would go back to that last team, and they ban one more. So basically there were 4 bans that applied to the whole game, and 2 protects by the end of it, so that they could not be banned in the second round, right? This made these games a lot more dynamic, and it actually really encouraged a lot of on-the-fly decision-making. It was really interesting. And I'll go ahead and tell you, in our group stages, when we were just fighting random people, we banned Spider-Man every single game. We did not want to play against him. It's unfun to play against that character. So what we decided was that we just didn't want to, right? And that was okay. And I think we had a lot of fun doing that because we never had to worry about that character. Even though he wasn't the best character ever, we all agreed that we thought it was better for everyone to be having more fun if we were able to get rid of this character. And I think that Overwatch would benefit from a system very similar to this. That you are able to keep characters that you want to play, but at the same time, you're able to get rid of characters that frustrate you. So if I'm playing, I'll give you an example. Circuit Royale. I hate Widowmaker. I hate her. You can go in the comments and eat me up. It happens all the time. But I hate her. I hate playing against Widowmaker. I think she skews the game, especially on the maps that she's super, super good, right? It's just, there is so little counterplay to her. And she can just take over lobbies, and it just feels like we're not even playing the same game at that point. So I could ban her. I could ban her on Circuit. And now this map that I find very, very frustrating has now opened up a little more, right? Maybe I even ban Hanzo later, right? Now we've gotten rid of a lot of the spam, and we've opened up this map, and now I can play it differently, right? And maybe the other team bans Sigma, and now we're just playing something new and different, and we can actually enjoy this map for what it is, rather than just the sniper fest, right? And now we're having more fun, right? We're getting to play characters that don't frustrate us. Like, I can always eliminate Roadhog. I could never ever have to worry about Roadhog. Again, with random people and probably having to vote to ban characters, probably different. But if I could always eliminate the characters that I hate, I would do it in a heartbeat, and I would have more fun overall. And I do think that part of the game of Overwatch is, learning how to adapt to things and all of that. But I think that with the current state of how some characters are designed, how frustrating they are to play against, a ban system like that would probably make the game more fun for kind of everybody. Imagine if you banned a character in like how tanks counterpick each other. If you banned one of those characters that just hard counterpicks your tank, now you don't have to worry about the counterpicking problem, because it's just like, well, now the hard counter is out of the way. So if I swap to something, it's not going to hard counter him. It's just going to be me trying to find a different angle to beat this comp. Stuff like that. So as I have been anti-hero ban before, I think I am now pro-hero ban. I think it is something that we should really look at, especially for competitive. Maybe not quick play. Quick play can be the Wild West, sure. But I would kind of love to see this. I can't lie. Map voting is something they just barely talked about. This was another thing that I was also like, I don't really think Overwatch needs that. I think you should know how to play on every map. But at the same time, there are maps that are really frustrating and we don't like. Take the hero bans out of it. Let's say hero bans don't exist. If Circuit comes up, it's like there's a choice between Circuit and another map. I'll probably not want to play on Circuit, right? It's just kind of how it goes. The map is not very fun. It's very frustrating. I think the one type of comp that you can play there just makes the game really boring. Not what I want to play in Overwatch. And again, it just makes the game more fun. Map voting I could go either way on. I don't really care that much, but I'm not opposed. I think it is not a bad idea. And again, if it makes the game more fun, more people coming back to it, why not, right? All right. Tournaments, again, they very briefly talked about tournaments, so I won't talk about it very much. But obviously, in-client tournaments, I think would be a great idea. Again, Marvel Rivals just had one, and we had a blast playing it. It was a decent format, although the seating was a little messed up in the tournament phase. We didn't quite like how that was made, but that's a different kind of topic. I think just having tournament clients, things to look forward in game, things to do with your friends to like really push past competitive to get maybe rewards that you wouldn't normally get, to say like, hey, I got a group of 5 people together and we were effective enough to get this thing. I think that's really cool. It really shows real achievement in the game, and it gives something to look forward to for people. And I think an in-game tournament client would really benefit Overwatch a lot, especially for the more hardcore people. Because I think, especially if it's like division based, like, oh, this is a Grandmaster tournament, this is a Champion tournament, maybe this is a Diamond tournament. That's going to make it more fun overall, because it feels like you're much more likely to have a good chance at winning and doing well. And then, top level players can play against their friends and colleagues in a much more often, much more coordinated environment. That's kind of what they like, right? I think that's overall really good. I think a tournament system could be really good for Overwatch, and we've talked about that before. I don't think it's anything new, so again, I'll just leave it at that. Lifeweaver is apparently getting some changes. They did not really say what they are, but it's coming next patch, so at the beginning of season 13. This is very exciting. I don't know what they're doing with him. I don't know if it's just like, it sounds to me like it's not like buffing or nerfing him. It is probably much closer to changing how he works a little bit, maybe giving him some more options, maybe allowing him to be aggressive. Who knows? I would love to have that. I'm not going to go ahead and all my things for Lifeweaver. Lifeweaver is one of those problem characters. I'm glad that they're seeing that he needs not just buffs because he's bad, but like he actually needs changes to his kit. That is good to see, and it's good to see that they're going to be coming soon. I'm excited to see what they've cooked up. They talked about potentially adding a third queue that it's like they think that people take quick play a little too seriously sometimes, and they want to add either like a more casual mode or like bridging the gap between competitive and quick play. That is something that I think they're hesitant on because of queue times and splitting all the queues, which I definitely agree is something. But in my opinion, this is a competitive game. It is a team versus a team, and that is the fun of it. Yes, you want to have a mode where it doesn't matter if you make mistakes nearly as much, and I think that is fine. But I don't think having a core game mode that is just completely casual, no try at all, is really the answer. They actually talk about it a lot, and I'm really happy with their answer, that at the end of the day, people do want to play the game. Like, playing the game is fun, and trying to win is fun. Like, you're not playing quick play to maybe do always the most optimal thing all the time, but you are still trying to play the game and have, like, do all of that stuff. You're playing the game of Overwatch. You're not just running around like chickens with your head cut off. So I don't think necessarily a more casual game mode in the core rotation is a great idea. I've always pitched the idea that I think people, if they wanted to warm up or just, do like dick around, basically, they should be able to be added to those like deathmatch games that people play while they're in queue, the skirmishes, stuff like that. Like, I feel like there should be a just completely non-committal option for that, so they can do whatever they want, join whenever they want, leave whenever they want. There's no repercussions. It's just, I want to get in and just shoot my guns and do stuff like that. And if people want to go in and just like sit around and talk and emote at each other instead of actually playing the game, they don't need to take a quick play game hostage. They can just do it over there, right? They talk about that there's always going to be people try-harding at everything or like not trying in everything, and that's just kind of natural. But in my opinion, not actually making another queue, just kind of adding them into the while you wait type of thing, might really be a good middle ground solution, so that quick play can be that somewhat competitive can be really competitive, and then you just have somewhere that you can just have fun, do whatever you want, a couple of different options. Just anything while you wait, right? I think that's a great idea. I mean, you could already kind of do that with custom games, right? It's the same idea, but something like that, just completely non-committal. I think it would be a great idea. They talked about quick play penalties. I'm just going to briefly say I think penalties are good. We are trying to play the game of Overwatch. Somebody leaving in the middle of it and not getting penalized for it, it's just like, now my experience in the game is going to suffer, or somebody throwing or anything. Like, there should be some level of playing the game that we are all trying to because I am trying to have fun, right? And playing the game and trying to win the game is the fun part, regardless of competitive or quick play. Again, a special, like just being able to join random games like that, I think would alleviate that problem. People can go do that if they don't want to actually like, oh, I'm just warming up for a scrim I have in 4 minutes and I'm going to leave the game anyways. Stuff like that, right? Okay, these last two, I think, are some of the ones I really wanted to talk about. 7v7. I don't know how to talk about this. Flats brought this up on the last Group Up podcast, and he brought it up here. I think it's a bad idea. I think it's a terrible idea. The visual clutter will be insane. The maps are not big enough to hold 7 people at once. In fact, what they talk about is that they tried to internally test 7v7 way before Overwatch 1 shipped, and what they found was that it felt like people were coming from all directions and that there was no way to even mark everything, and it was just so beyond chaotic that it was like hard. It was not even like trackable at that point. The game was just completely just off the rails deathmatch, basically. And I agree with them. I think that's probably very valid. The idea, I think, behind it is that, you know, you get your 2 tanks, your 2 supports, but you add another DPS into the queues, so that queue times could be evened out, right? It's a middle ground solution between queue times of 5v5 and 6v6. Ironically, it's like 5, 7, and 6, like 7's in the middle of 5 and 6. But it's just adding another. It's making the ratio better for DPS. I get it. I will give credit on that thinking, but I think 7v7 is just way far away from what we are looking for Overwatch. It is we have lost the plot while we're talking about 7v7. Let's talk about 5v5 and 6v6. That's perfectly fine. But if we are going into the realms of 7v7 or 4v4, we're completely lost. We are not talking about anything worthwhile as of right now. So those are my thoughts. I do not want to make a full video on 7v7 because it's just going to be shitting on the idea. But I see the merits. I see the idea. I don't think it will work at all. Okay. This was the thing that made me the most excited. The one that I don't think you'll hear many people talking about. Aaron Keller specifically brings up the mythical October patch from Overwatch 1. I believe it was October of 2020. Basically, it's when people said that 6v6 roll lock was in the best state it ever was. There was so much variety. It felt really good. You know, double shield wasn't king yet. You could play everything. Double bubble, double main tank dive, Rhine Diva, Rhine Zarya. You could play Moira. You could play Moira in Brawl comps. You didn't have to play BAP. You could even probably play Ana. All of that stuff, right? Like, it was very, very open. It was kind of like 6v6ers' dream, right? And I think that we oversense. Oh my god, it's overblown how good that patch was. Not necessarily, but it's like people talk about it like it was the second coming of Christ. It's like, yes, this is the game working at its best, but you know, changes have to be made, characters have to be added, things are going to change, right? I guess no one was actually ever added after that point, but changes were made, right? Basically, what Aaron Keller says, and I think he makes a great point, is that we haven't really had that with 5v5 yet, but there is no saying that kind of patch or that kind of feeling will not happen for 5v5, right? Like 6v6 roll queue, right? Like, we only ever talk about one patch of it, like it working, right? And he kind of brings up the point of like, if we never had that patch, would people really still be on the 6v6 train nearly as hard? And I think this is really interesting to know because I've talked about this before. It's like a million bad patches do not disprove the fact that 5v5 can't work in theory. One good patch can, right? That is the same thing with that October patch, right? There is one patch that proves like 6v6 can really work, right? And of course, the counter argument is like, well, there's plenty of other patches that were good for 6v6. I'm not denying that. I'm just saying like that is like the gold star patch, right? Overwatch 2 hasn't had its gold star patch yet, right? But I think it is something that exists. And again, they're open to 6v6, they're open to 5v5, right? But if Overwatch 2 5v5 got that kind of gold star, the standard that we want for this kind of patch cycle, then I think that the conversation would become much more nuanced, right? Basically, what the idea here is just like, if we can have that kind of patch, of feeling, then maybe we won't feel so inclined to feel like we have to go back to 6v6 because we get the idea and we understand 5v5 much better, right? And I think that with this dev team, about how aggressive they patch and everything, if we are able to get to that state, they will understand what made that state the way it is and try to keep it there as best as possible. I think the old dev team, the way that they balanced, was not going to work, right? And of course, the counter argument is that this dev team might be able to figure out 6v6 way better than the old dev team could. And you know what? That is fair. I think that's definitely a fair argument to say, but we don't know either way, right? So basically, my larger point here is that just because we haven't had the October patch for Overwatch 2 does not mean that it doesn't exist somewhere. The real question is, are the dev team willing to make it, right? Do they have the brain, do they have the capacity to make it? If the answer is yes, then I'm perfectly fine we stay on 5v5. If the answer is no, then perhaps 6v6 really is the answer, and we should try to get back to what that October patch kind of was, or what we feel about the October patch. I won't go into all the whole things about like why, you know, the feeling of 5v5 and 6v6 and what we want to bring back, but I do want to say that Overwatch 2 has not had that moment yet. The real question is, do the devs want to focus on 5v5, or do they want to focus on finding that moment with 6v6? That's really the big thing. To me, it sounds like they're still leaning towards 5v5. Again, it is the easier solution. It requires the least amount of work in theory. And I would agree with them on that front. If they're trying to get there as fast as possible, maybe there's more pain points along the way. But with the least amount of resources and work put in, that's probably the best way to do it. But yeah, okay. I'm not gonna ramble any longer. That is the Group Up podcast. Again, I think this one was pretty good. I think they've talked really open, and SVB and Flats asked a lot of hard hitting questions. There was some stuff I didn't talk about, like the social aspect, the way that Overwatch is perceived by the larger gaming community, that I am very surprised that they answered so bluntly and didn't really give a lot of PR speak. They really kind of spoke from the heart there about their perspective as the game developers. And, you know, as game developers, you also want to keep a level head and not let it get to you. And it's good to see that, you know, that is still something that they acknowledge and that they are willing to talk about. So I'm, again, going to give one more, like, bravo to to Alec and Aaron here, that they are talking to us and being much more upfront, direct, and honestly personal than I think most dev teams are. This is a great step in the right direction. And it's a very fast after the blog post. I mean, we are getting something like a week later, basically. So this is really good to see. I think this is really positive, and I hope that they continue to talk to us through, you know, the coming months, but especially as season 12 is getting closer and closer. I really want them to talk to us about the map reworks idea, like the map reworks that they have and some of the changes for the heroes that are coming, stuff like that. I think that'd be great to talk about. But I'm going to end it here. Thank you guys so much for watching. This was streamed live, twitch.tv/Lane Hemingway, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, when you can catch me live and talk to me about it, about a lot of this stuff. If you're on YouTube, let me know what you think about this discussion if you watch the whole thing. What do you like about some of my ideas, some of their ideas, stuff like that. Also, like and subscribe while you're at it. Does really help me out. And if you want to talk Overwatch, give me a hot take or something like that, join my Discord. It is down below in the description. Okay, thank you guys so much for watching. Have a good day.